Welcome to Harvestime University. Today we're looking at how to organize and train your long-range planning task force. Now back in the, what I would call the old days, back in the 80s and even the 90s, we had building committees put together, and it was very typical that a building committee would be comprised of, maybe 5 to 7 guys, and they would be in charge of the entire process. And inevitably things would get missed. You know, a lot of times buildings would get designed and actually built just based on the personalities, you know, of the people on this building committee. And sometimes it was even just one personality. I did a project one time where the head of the building committee was a very large guy, very loud and outspoken, and he, for a living, was in charge of catering for a major hotel chain. Well, everything that the guy ever talked about was the kitchen. The kitchen this and the kitchen that, because that was his field of expertise. That's what he did for a living for the hotels. Well, nobody would ever confront him, and nobody would ever try and speak up and say, you know, the church isn't just about a kitchen. You know, we aren't supposed to like reach lost people and disciple people and train people, but every time you tried it, he would just cut you off. And so that church ended up with a magnificent kitchen, phenomenal kitchen, with a little itty-bitty church attached to one side. That's pretty much useless. And then the guy got transferred to another city, and nobody knows how to use this incredible kitchen. So when you look at building committees and how they used to do that, and then a lot of churches, I mean, I used to do it back in the 80s, and then we've learned a lot since 81, 82, that's that time frame, and we've structured things a lot differently today so that we can develop facilities that are not based on somebody's personality because they want a kitchen or something, and it's not based on short-term needs either. You know, looking at, well, we need more nursery space, so let's just slap on a lean-to to the nursery, or let's just fix an immediate problem. A lot of churches do that. They just keep slapping things on and nothing makes sense. I call it the Jed Clampett School of Church Development, where it just looks like something the Beverly Hillbillies threw together, and you need a compass and a Boy Scout just to find your way around. So what we want to do is show you how to structure what we call a long-range planning task force. We're going to look at everything from starting with your overall strategic ministry plan. How does that filter through to who you're called to reach in your community, and what kind of programs and ministries will you have for that? And then how do you go about developing a long-range campus plan so that you're not looking at, you know, what's our next move? We want to kind of jump ahead of all of that and say, where do we want to be 15 or 20 years from now with a long-range master site plan that matches the purpose and the vision and the core values that are defined in our strategic ministry plan. And then once we have that long-range master plan done, come back from it's a big, hairy, audacious goal. You know, I mean, it's a lot of expense in building out an entire campus. And then most churches can't do that all at once. I've only seen a couple that were actually able to do that. But then we want to take that and say, all right, now, if that's the big picture, if that's where we want to be 10 years, 15 years from now, when our campus is completely built out, what's our next move? We're not going to build up the whole thing. We're going to do what's called a phased development plan based on the immediate needs of the ministry and our financial reality. What is the smartest next step for us as we grow the church from where we are today to what we feel is God's highest and best and potential for developing a church and a campus in our community to impact the lost, to reach the lost, and build disciples. So we want to look at breaking this whole big task down into bite-sized chunks. And I think when you get finished with this class, you'll understand why, you know, a bunch of guys gathered around a tractor like we have on the PowerPoint here could never pull this off. I mean, this takes a lot of work from a lot of different teams. But when all the work comes together, it fits together like a well-tuned machine, and we end up with a facility that's nothing more than a tool, but it's a tool for ministry that will really help you to go out and accomplish everything you want to do. So as we go through here, I want to talk about various churches that we've done and bring in examples and tell you why we do what we do and why it works so well. Let's start with looking at some of the top 10 habits of prevailing ministries. These are churches that I've worked with over the years, and some of the things that they've done through coaching. Not all of it was because of my coaching. A lot of churches do this on their own. But let me tell you what some of the top 10 great things that these churches are doing. So let's start with number one, okay? The churches have a clearly defined plan that identifies why they exist, where they're going, and how they intend to get there. Okay, that's our strategic ministry plan. If you've taken class number one here with Harvestime University, then you understand how a strategic ministry plan works and why that's so important. So that's the first thing that I find prevailing churches across the United States must have in order to reach their overall objectives and become the church that God really wants them to be. Number two, church leaders and staff are united in purpose, mission, vision, and core values, meaning that they know where the ministry is going and they agree on how to get there. Now, you can have a strategic ministry plan and still have folks in your church that are not united, on where they're going. So participation in the strategic ministry plan and the development of that is really key. Not from everybody in the church, certainly, but from the senior pastor, the elder board, and your key staff. They have to participate in the development of that strategic ministry plan, because with participation comes understanding, with understanding comes ownership, with ownership comes involvement, and it's very important that everybody's involved in the development of the strategic plan. At least your senior pastor, obviously, the key staff, your top staff, and your elder board. Okay, we want to make sure they're all involved so that they all take ownership of that. The next thing, number three here, there's a clear communication plan with church members into the community that God's called you to reach. You can have a phenomenal strategic ministry plan, and you can have all your leadership united in that, but then if it just goes on the shelf, with all your books in your bookcase, it's not going to do you any good. You have to have a proactive plan for communicating that first to the congregation so that they buy into it and take ownership. We've had pastors do, multiple week sermon series on purpose and on vision and on core values and why this is all important. And then we want to communicate it to the community around us. We can have a phenomenal ministry. We can have great ministries and programs. But if nobody knows that your church offers these programs, then nobody's going to come, from the community you're trying to reach. So if we have programs that are designed for outreach, we certainly have to have a way to communicate that to the community that God's called us to reach. So great communications. Number four, the church has a proactive prayer team that covers the process and the people with prayer support. Now, let me tell you right now, if you don't have a proactive prayer team covering your ministry, then get one soon. The enemy is not a passive enemy that's just going to sit back and go, oh, look, there's another church developing a strategic plan. I suppose God's going to come down and bless them in their efforts to reach the lost and to develop Christ-like disciples. And so I guess I better get my little demon friends and just bug out of here. That's not the way it works. The enemy will be all over you if it's not already. And we've seen amazing things. I would say that every project we've done, and we've done a lot of projects around the United States, you could actually track the success or failure of that project, because we've had some disasters. But you could track those directly to how proactive the prayer team is. We've seen God just do absolute miracles, and we have seen the enemy come in and raise absolute havoc. But the prayer team, we're going to talk about putting these teams together and how all these things work. But the prayer team, I'm going to say it over and over and over, is the most important team you can have.